Alright, here's the latest crude mock-up of the Linsight install. Here you can see we have the 9 modules, which compose 36 cells when rewired. So these cells have to be rewired. You'll note that these cells are not rewired yet. This is just a mechanical mock-up. So we have our 9 cells here, and then we have the junction board off of the IMA battery, the OEM nickel metal hydride battery. So we will be reusing that board. And you'll see that we actually have connections that are the same. So we still hook up here. We don't have to take any of the motor control module out or the DC-DC converter. All the plugs plug in the same spot with one change that we'll be making. So I'll note that change later on when we modify this board in a minute. Okay, so this guy was hooking up to the BCM. With the Linsight system, we don't have a BCM, so this cable connector here will just remain disconnected. It won't hook up to anything at all. Here is the MCM, except that it's been replaced with the Linsight PCB. And so the cable, as you saw, kind of comes around here and goes around like that. Now all of the BMS wiring that hooks up to the battery hooks up through the hole on the other side. And so the high voltage stuff will come out right here, and it will hook up to all the various leads. So there will be 30, 40 connections or so, and we'll discuss that later. But today what I want to look at is modifying the junction board to plug into this board here. So the switch, everything will remain functional. We will just have a couple of changes that I'll show you now. Okay, let's modify this junction board. To do it, you're going to need some thick, heavy leads with eyelets on them, which will come with the Linsight kit. For this video, though, I'm not going to be using these thick leads because they're really hard to route, and you end up wasting a lot of time on the video. So instead, I'm going to use these really thin cables here. Notice there's 2 different eyelet sizes you need. Now, again, if you use these guys and you try to run your car on it, this is all the current goes through all 4 of the leads we're doing. So this is way too small. And then I just didn't have enough eyelets, so this is nothing. This is just a little connector to make the cord a little bit longer. Same thing over here. So what we'll do to modify this guy, first thing we're going to do is we're going to push in these 2 little tabs and then push that guy down, and that just moves that wire out of the way. And then we're going to take this black cover off, and there's a push here. There's another one over here like that, and when you push the 2, it just comes off. Set that aside again. We're going to do the same thing down here. There's a push there and a push here. So taking that off. So the first thing we have is the actual switch here, which on the OEM pack cuts the pack right down the middle. The goal is to have it less high voltage. Now on the Linsight module, we can't actually cut the pack in half. There's specific spots we have to do it. So you can see the battery's halves are right here and right here. So when you turn the switch off, basically 60 of the volts are on one side and 60 of the volts are on the other, whatever, 70, 80 of the volts. It's cut right down the middle. So on the Linsight module, we actually have to put this between cells 12 and 13 or cells 26 and 27. If you put it between any of the other cells, then when you turn the switch off, you'll blow out one of the circuits on the Linsight PCB. And I will go over that in much more detail, but just wanted to note it here again. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take off this bus bar. So we aren't using these bus bars because we're no longer hooking up to the nickel metal hydride cells. Instead, we're going to use those cables I showed you. So we're going to take this junction board off. You won't be reusing it, so you can throw it away. And then we're going to connect one of our heavy-duty wires. Again, I'm not going to use a heavy-duty wire here because they're just really hard to route on video. So in the interest of time, we're going to be cheating here. We screw this guy on like that, and then we'll carefully route it around. It goes through this hole right here. And so it basically comes out the other end. It'll have an eyelet on the other end as well. No big deal. Next guy we're going to do, the 12 millimeter. We're going to loosen this guy. Now I've already loosened these, so it will take a little more effort. Again, you don't need this bus bar either. We're going to take another thick cable. We're going to throw it through here. Please, guys, do not use 16 gauge wire like this is. Bad things will happen. Your car will, or these wires will melt when you jump on it. So here's that guy, and we'll tighten it down too. And so now we have these two leads here, and they basically, again, one of these sides, doesn't matter which one, goes to 12. The other side, doesn't matter which one, goes to cell 13. So 12 plus, 13 minus. So there's that. Next up, we've done these two mods there. Next up, we have the pack minus and the pack positive. Now the pack minus is right here. You can see it hooks up to this capacitor, which is way too far away. The inductance on that cable, it's probably not doing a whole lot. The other side goes to the connector, which goes to the DC-DC converter. So we'll leave this junction board installed, and we'll just snake our wire around it. You could cut this off, but again, the goal with Linsight is that you don't have to actually modify anything. So don't cut it off, just route the wire through it. Again, we're using a thick lead. Thick lead goes through there. There's plenty of room. I'm using a thin lead to show the video. So we're going to actually just hook the negative up where the DC-DC converter goes as well, and the IGBIT drivers. So this is the top of that junction board, obviously. So then we'll route this guy. Now this guy is going to be some version of here. This guy will basically just go down there like that. So again, eyelet, this lead's probably too short. This guy will stay there. So there's your negative. Now the positive, it's slightly more complicated. We got, the positive is right here, and we need to connect this, that, and our new lead there. So let me show you how that works. First thing you need to do is you need to loosen these two screws to make the battery current shunt. This is the very accurate current shunt that measures the actual current going into and out of the battery. So we remove that guy, and that's just so the bus bar will come out. Next we'll remove the other side of this capacitor bank there, set that aside, and then we'll also take this guy, and this is the pre-charge circuit that pre-charges the capacitor bank. So basically this relay turns on, this resistor keeps the current down. So now we've loosened all this stuff. We just take the battery sensor out like that. Don't need that either, so we can throw it away. Keep it though. Now we'll screw the battery current sensor back in. Now you might not want to screw it back in yet when you're actually using the thick gauge wire, because it might make it easier to route it, but I'm going to screw it in for now so I don't forget about it. Now what we'll have, again, thick lead right there. It'll have a smaller eyelet. So again, we're just doing pretend here. So this guy goes through here like that. Something like that. Boom. It'll route like that. Make sure you pre-flex this so that it's all good. And now what we're going to do is this guy's going to go underneath first and kind of go to the left side. And then this guy's actually going to go down first. So notice I went underneath here. This guy went down. This is your high current path, so you don't want this guy getting melted in the middle. This goes first. This guy goes second. This guy goes third. Like that. And then I'm going to drop the screw through all that. 1, 2, and 3. If you use a large eyelet here, then when you screw this down, you won't get really good contact. You've got to have a really small eyelet. Okay, so we've now tightened those down like that. You'll have one screw left over. This went in one of the junction bars, if you remember correctly. These won't fit back on, just because before you had a bus bar. Well, now you have a thick wire coming out. See how there's a little bit of interference here? It won't fit. So you could cut this, but you don't really need it. It's just keeping your fingers out there from getting electrocuted. This guy, again, won't fit as well because this guy's over here, so it won't fit. So throw those aside. You don't really need them. So what you have now is you have 4 wires that come out. This guy goes to your pack minus. This guy goes to your pack plus. These guys go between cells 12 plus and 13 minus. Okay, so the last thing we need to do is we have 2 current sensors here on the OEM system, here and here. Well, Linsight only uses one of these current sensors, and it's a bit nuanced here, but on the OEM system, we have this very accurate current sensor that measures all the current that goes into and out of the battery. It's right here on the positive lead. Now, on the OEM system, we also use this guy here, which measures how much current comes into and out of the IMA motor. Now, we don't really care about that on Linsight, nor does it work because this connector right here hooks up to the BCM, which we're no longer using, whereas this guy right here, this connector, it actually hooks up to the MCM, which we're reusing the connector on. So we want to use this connector and this device. So how do we do that? Well, fortunately, Honda was thinking ahead for Linsight here, and they actually made this connector plug into that connector. So kind of convenient, it just works out. Now the wiring is of course different and they work very differently, but Linsight takes that into account. So what we need to do essentially is take a flathead screwdriver and we're going to push the tab here, and then we're going to just pull this connector out, which is usually easy. There we go. And we're going to just start pulling this guy up. We're going to take him over here and we're going to just plug it in like that. So now what you'll notice is the BCM battery current sensor is now plugged into the MCM harness. And you know, I've taken account into the wiring difference here, no problem. So if you look, you'll notice that this guy's not actually used anymore. Again, Linsight doesn't use it, doesn't need it. So what you could do if you wanted to save the 7 ounces or whatever, you can actually take this screw off, this guy off, and that guy off, and then undo these 2 screws here, and the current sensor will come out. I'm going to do that because I'm a weight weenie. Take this 12 millimeter here. We're going to, I haven't loosened these yet, so I'm going to loosen that guy like that. And then we're going to loosen, again, this is optional, don't need to do it. This is about how tight these guys usually are when I haven't pre-loosened them all, so you got to see that in the end anyway. Take that guy off, and then we'll take the 10 millimeter off here. Now this fuse here is probably going to prevent this from moving easily, so we might have to loosen this side as well, which is fine. So we don't need to remove it, just loosen it. And now this guy will basically come off as soon as we, you know what, it's probably easier to just take this fuse off. Note that the wire there for the DC is on the bottom. So then we will loosen these 2 screws here. Like that. So again, that's about how tight these are. And you haven't pre-loosened them. And I'll say it again, but this is optional. You don't have to actually remove this guy. But again, we're weight weenies, so we can take that off. So here's the current sensor we're no longer using, and it just goes like that. You don't need the bracket. You just throw it in your pen. Things you'll never use again. Put this guy back here like that. Put our 10 millimeter back in. Ooh, is it gonna fit? There it is. Okay. So there's our 10 millimeter. Here is our battery. And we'll drop that down here. And we'll put this guy here. Like that. So we'll tighten these up. 1, 2, and that guy there. If you missed that. Okay, so we've done all the changes. Okay, so we've made all the changes we need to make now. We've got our 4 high current guys. 1, 2, 3, 4. All routed around there. And they're all tightened up. All good to go. So this is now a complete Linsight modification. So, yeah, let's go back in and we'll plug it in. Okay, so we're back here in the bay, and before we install the junction board here that we just modified, we need to figure out where to put the fan. Now the OEM fan is right here and it sucks through the battery bay. Now these batteries don't have any holes through them, so we still want to cool the area, but we can't, you know, draw the air across the fan. But what we can do is we can actually put the fans in our air ducting. So you see there's a gap right here. This is where the air will blow out. Now the OEM obviously blows across, but here all the air is going to come out right here. To do that, we're going to install 2 fans in here. So the OEM fan, unfortunately, is too wide. We can't reuse it. So we get 2 thinner fans. I don't have them yet, but I just want to show you the proof of concept here on what we're going to do. So we're going to slide the fans inside of here, and then we're going to drill 2 holes on each side, and then basically screw into that fan. So what you're going to do is you take the fan like this, and you just stick it down there, and it just slides right in. So the first fan you stick in there, you rotate it, or whatever. You just don't want the cord to get bound. Set that there. The fan just goes all the way across. Now the thinner fan is going to come all the way here. This one, it gets too thin, so it can't come out. So there's the first fan. Again, it'll slide about an inch down. The second fan will basically go right there, and again, it'll be thinner, so that won't be a problem. And then once they're installed, you just plug them back in here. So the air will still get blown. Now this guy right here, we are gonna have to cut the battery connector here to reuse this connector on the system. So worst case, it would mean that if you did ever revert back, you'd have to wire these back, or you could buy another IMA fan if you wanted to. Not really worth it. So the wiring here is basically going to just come through the hole right there like that. That'll plug into our wiring harness, and again, that'll be hooked up to 2 fans in parallel, and they'll blow all the air across there. So we'll actually get really good airflow through the device. Now let's actually look at installing this junction board here. So we've already modified it. Again, the leads are way too thin. If you install leads this thin, it will melt down. So don't do that. I'm just doing it for proof of concepting. The junction board is just going to drop in here. We'll screw our positive and our negative in. You'll notice that, again, we have the junction from the negative that we previously attached down there. It's going to go on top. There's room over here for it. And then we'll just screw the negative like that. Positive is the same thing. Now if we come look at our harness here, we're going to take the Linsight module here. So this is the OEM MCM mechanical enclosure, but it now has Linsight in it. And again, all the Linsight wires are going to come out the hole here where the high voltage cable used to connect. So you'll have 37 or so wires coming out of here. One is connected to each cell. When you're done, you'll basically put this guy here. Don't forget about the wire down here. You got to hook up to the device. I don't even know where it is. Oh, it's on the end of here. So this has got to hook over to there. So you'll see that you need to cut this to be pretty long so that it'll reach. I'm a few inches short. So that plugs in like that. And then let's look at this guy. This guy comes here again. We don't connect this guy. It was hooked up to BCM. It just sits there, doesn't do anything. You'll plug that guy in. You'll plug the high voltage relay in, and you won't plug this in. This connector will just stay out. Remember, this is the OEM connector for the, it goes to the BCM, which is measuring the battery current, and Linsight has that all integrated. Here's the DC. Okay, so we got all that stuff plugged in now. There's enough room for this to basically go right in between to where there's enough room for the high voltage lead here, and you don't also crunch any of these guys. So this guy will hook up to your pack positive. Again, it'll be a thicker lead. This guy will hook up to your pack negative over here. And then these two will hook up to between cells 12 and 13, which are again high voltage. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So you want to hook it up between these 2 cells. So you'll hook one right here like that. The other one will hook right like that. There will be no bus bar connecting these cells. Okay, this will be hooked up to our negative. This will hook up to the fan. So that is the Linsight install there. And then you just put it all together. Now, we have some errata here, of course. This is loose. If this falls into this battery junction here, it's metal and it's going to short out and things are not going to be happy. So we do need to mount this guy somehow in here, and I kind of just leave that to the community for now. It's something that if someone ends up building a base to hold this battery, then make provisions for this. There's holes in the bottom that it can mount to. So this is the Linsight install. It's very easy. Now, again, we have the 37 odd wires that are measuring the BMS currents there. But that's it. That is the complete install. It's very painless.